Hey, Kara, thank you for being here. And for agreeing, for everyone who's listening to us, we have an event in mind. We decided to call it Momentum Builder, and it's about speakers, actually supervisors and consultants in our area that we highly recommend for the skills, for their reputation. So just know that in this series, there's very few people who are in because we're very picky about who are we highlighting. And in this case, it's Kara. So Kara, thank you. Thank you for being here and for agreeing to be part of this event. So if it's okay with you, let me ask you this. What inspired you to become a supervisor mentor in our field of mental health? And what has shaped your approach when you're working with clinicians?
Oh, well, I'll do the short version of the story, but I have my own leadership trauma, which means in grad school I had horrible supervision. Didn't know anything different because, you're a green clinician going in the field. Um, and there's a whole video of that story. But basically, it catapulted me into what I knew I didn't want from supervision. And eventually, I found myself with a great supervisor who's now my business partner. And we created the empowerment model of clinical supervision, which was like basically the opposite of everything that happened to me personally and professionally. So no one's counseling you, no one's breaking boundaries, everyone is very clear on the role they have. So that lived experience absolutely shaped why I'm a clinical supervisor. Now, funny story, I've been a clinical supervisor longer than I've been in private practice. So I've been a clinical supervisor for 12 years, private practice for 10. And that's kind of how that shaped out, is seeing the value of clinical supervision in community mental health.
Okay. So, what are the most common challenges you think therapists face in their professional growth, and how do you support them in overcoming those obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I think from this place of empowerment, I know it's a buzzword, but it really is like the foundation of how I show up in clinical supervision. A lot of these folks are coming in saying, I don't know what I don't know. And so even in grad school, we're told lean on your supervisor, which I think has a place, but it's not an end all be all.
Yeah.
So how I empower my supervisees to make sure that they feel like they can ask questions, but also get curious and find answers themselves. So
Mhm.
we do scaffolding rather than gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And so those folks then feel like they can stay curious in getting answers, whether it's from me or not. Maybe they have a different belief system than I do. Maybe they found research or other sources outside of me. But I am not here to subscribe to ask your supervisor, ask your supervisor, ask your supervisor. Like, yes, critical incidents, whole different story. But for these folks, just like help them believe in themselves. Looking at that imposter syndrome and saying, you got this. And eventually you have to do this on your own. I mean, you might have a consultant, but like you're not going to be required to have supervision forever. So I think just like all things empowerment, communication, curiosity, all those things work really well in my framework.
Love that. I love that you mentioned like sneaking gatekeeping. So
Mm.
let me ask you, how does your supervision or mentorship when you're working with consultees incorporate cultural humility? And how do you respond when you're working with diverse populations?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of broaching, naming the elephant in the room of like, hey, what's it like to work with me as a white cisgender female? Especially if I have supervisees or consultees who identify with other identities than my own. So I'd like to name it up front from curiosity and like encourage them to feel comfortable talking about that. Sometimes I'm bridging that into our work of how does this impact how you see your clients. My favorite would be like, okay, you have your own bias and agenda. We all do as humans. How's that going to show up with your client work? So lots of open-ended questions, lots of safety to talk about it, like creating this like safe place for them to land, saying, huh, I'm not showing up neutrally. And how do we want to make that work?
Nice.
Okay. I like that. So, you have a ton of expertise and interests. So, what
Yeah.
specific unique skills or specializations do you bring to your role as a supervisor? Or even just if someone wants to consult with you, like what are the things that you're like, I got this, I'm your expert here?
Oh, I would never say expert. That's the one thing. Specialties, yes. Expert, no. I think as a human, I definitely can speak workaholism and perfectionism. Those are parts of my own story. So, like having people show up authentically in that and work with that is part of it. On the professional side, I do a lot of conversations around suicide assessment, healing from client suicide. So, like, go to right to the heaviness of that. I pride myself on being a confidential grief specialist, which means any of the horrible things that happen in our field that we feel like we can't talk to in our field or outside of it, they can come into my space and do that. So that includes subpoena, grievance, client violence, client death, and client suicide, and professional betrayal. currently writing a book on all these things, so it's fresh in my mind. But also, let's see, what else? Financial therapy would be the other half that I'm really leaning into lately. So talking about what does it mean to be charging your worth or looking at secondary income streams, because I don't think the modern therapist is supposed to see clients and that's it. So
Yeah.
I'm all for those conversations. If you want to write a book, create a course, have something else going on besides the one-to-one client work, I'd love to support supervisees or consultees with that if that's appropriate.
Nice. So what advice will you give new therapists or even seasoned therapists in regards to enhancing, which you kind of sort of started talking about their clinical skills, um, but actually choosing the right supervisor?
Hmm. So what advice to choose the right supervisor? Well, I think it feels really interesting when students go, wait, I'm allowed to interview them. They're not just interviewing me. So I actually empower those folks to have questions at the ready of like, what kind of questions do you want to ask? Do you want to ask about their expertise? Do you want to ask how long they've been in the field? Do you want to ask them about their communication style? One of my favorite questions for supervisees to ask me or anyone they're working with is describe your supervision style with adjectives. Like, how would someone else describe this? Um, describe your communication style. How would you describe that? Sometimes it's about providing references and talking to someone else who's been a supervisee and saying like, hey, give me like the offline version of how it was to work with this person. So I think even just like presenting that to an early career clinician, it feels different because like, oh, I thought that there's like this power dynamic and I'm just supposed to be grateful that someone wants to supervise me. And it's like, no, it really is about best fit. There's so
Mhm.
many of us doing so many different things that I think even just presenting as you get to interview them as much as they interview you is really powerful for these new folks.
Yeah. It's like we forget that. Like we look at best fit for therapists and then somehow that goes out the window with supervisors.
Yeah, it's wild to me. And because so many of us have leadership trauma, the more I own that in my own story, the more I hear from colleagues that's
Mhm.
happening. I feel like this is one of the tools in our toolkit to make that less likely. Of
Yeah.
like actually ask the questions. How do they handle conflict? What's their feedback style look like? What roles do they think they play as a supervisor? The question you all ask me of like what like framework do they come from in supervision, if that feels important to them. Just asking questions, staying curious.
Okay. And along with that, we want to know who you are, not as a supervisor, but as a person. So when you are not a supervisor or even a therapist, how do you recharge and take care of yourself?
So we're modeling self-care, are we? Let's see. What do I do? Well, I have a toddler at home, so I don't know if recharge is the right word, but I love to be around her, spend quality time. My goals right now in this year that we're filming this is I have some professional goals and I have an attunement goal with her. So like to be attuned means like when she asks something of me, eye contact, I drop what I'm doing, I'm getting off the phone, off the laptop, whatever that looks like. Being outside, I've been starting to take more walks. This is something that was part of my professional burnout journey a couple of years ago. Just started realizing I need to move my body more. So that's definitely a way to recharge. And I'm being around people that inspire me, like that invigorate me just with their entrepreneurial spirit, the projects they're doing. That's very rewarding. So although I do that at work, I also do that on my off time, is hang out with people who are like, this project, this shiny thing, it's fun.
I just heard a squirrel. Let's go
Yeah.
get.
But not in a derogatory way. Like,
Oh,
oh, okay,
no,
I'll
no,
go
no.
there with you. That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dopamine hit to hear other people's passions.
Yes,
That's right.
exactly it. Uh, Thank you, Kara, for being part of not only this video, sharing with and anyone who's viewing this video in regards to your skills so they can contact you. And especially for being a part of this crazy idea that Jessica brought to me in regards to, what will happen if we bring everyone into a momentum builder so that we can empower other therapists. So thank you for being part of this.
Yeah.
I'm glad I made the cut. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.